we're talking about artists that have decades of catalog, decades of hits,
millions of albums sold,
right. And the whole nine, you know. So they have to trust, you know, that you're going to be able to handle their gift with integrity,
right?
You know,
right. To deliver. So let's talk a little music business, something you know well, and a lot of people, you know, want to achieve what you've achieved. But you mentioned earlier, this is not just fun and games.
It's not.
This you have supported an entire family,
right,
from your gift of music.
I have,
and so we like to keep it real on MusicallyHitched. We like to kind of dig into the details,
most definitely,
that maybe, you know, it's just easy to gloss over. So, you know, you've produced in different eras, right? We're now in the digital age, and that's cooking alive and well.
Exactly.
But some things haven't changed. So talk to our listeners about what producer points are, because sometimes when you drop terms like that, not everybody knows, right?
Right.
Producer fees, and there's things like producer agreements and production deals, all of this language that producers need to understand. So how did you go about negotiating? Did you just have to take what you got, or at a certain point did you say, I want X, Y, and Z in terms of points on a record? Can you clarify that?
Sure. So of course, starting out, you know, there were those moments where I was taken advantage of, you know, and just more so because I was green. I was green to the business, you know. I'm thinking, you know, I was just more excited just to be able to do the work, you know, and neglected the business aspect of it. And the event that actually made me want to actually start digging into the business side of it was, I had this group called The Promise, and we signed a recording contract with Word Records. Prior to that, we were signed to a production deal, and the production deal, I later found out, was a bad deal that we signed. You know, and this was my first major project into the business or in the industry.
Can we talk about production deal too? Like,
Sure.
What is a production deal?
So a production deal is, say for instance, I'm a producer or a production company, and I signed a deal with a label, and in that deal, you know, I may have to turn in to them 3 different artists or so. Okay. So with that deal, you know, they work out a deal with me, which is in that deal a distribution deal or so as well. So in return, then, what I do as the production company that has the deal with the label, I then go find artists.
Okay.
Sign artists to me, which I turn in those masters and recordings or records to the record label that I have the deal with.
Right.
So that particular artist, in return, is actually signed to a production deal because they're signed to me, versus being exclusively to the label.
Right. But your deal is actually exclusive with the label.
My so deal is exclusive with the record label.
Right. So kind of like some people may say a middleman.
The middleman, pretty much is what that is.
Okay.
So like I said, so it was a horrible deal. To the point that it literally, I said, if the business is going to be like this, I don't want to do music.
One of those deals. Okay.
It was one of those deals.
Okay.
It really was. So after, you know, swimming in that emotion for a minute, I decided, I said, you know what? No, you know, because I realized that to an extent, most of this was also my fault because I didn't know. You know,
didn't know the business.
I didn't know the business.
Right. Okay.
So in return, what I did, you know, I I started studying, asking.
Yeah.
You know, and I think, you know, a lot of situations that I've seen that didn't necessarily work out for either producers or artists was more so merely just because they didn't understand the business.
Wow.
So, and as it relates to your question with the producer points, so a point is basically like 1% or so. You know, so
the 1.1%.
The one, right.
Okay, gotcha.
Right. So what you would need to do is to understand the ratio of your points or the royalty to that particular deal or agreement. So say that if I'm getting 5 to 7 points or so, then that's the producer royalties to that particular agreement. And as a producer, the way that I would negotiate my agreements is that I would negotiate. So they give you in advance. You know, you get an advance on it, or whatever the all in is. It could be all in, or you know, advance on up against the record. So what I learned to do, and what I would advise even to producers, is to construct your deal to where you start recouping from the recoupment of your production budget, not necessarily the production, the budget of the album. Okay. Which means, so I'm just gonna give off a random number. Say if they gave you $30,000 or so, then at $30,001 is when you start recouping, versus say that the album, and I'm throwing out numbers because we don't get these numbers these days, but just say that not anymore, but just say that the budget for the record was 75. You know, where you want again your royalty to start recouping at 30,001 versus 75, because 75 could actually be 125 by the time they're finished paying with the for the record, because the label has to pay for, you know, promotion on the record, you know, all of the deals that are included in that, you know. So it's important, you know, to be able to get in and you know, understand the business, and don't be afraid, you know, to handle the business, you know, whatever your agreements are, you know. And I always say, you know, you get what you negotiate, and at the same time, that doesn't say that, you know, you're a producer just starting out and you asking for the moon. Right.
That's what I was going to ask you. You know, the balance right there. Can a new producer who's fresh on the scene, gospel music, for example, or pop, R&B, no matter the genre, can they go in asking for what a Cedric Thompson can ask for at this stage?
In order for you to get to that point, you know, there's some work that you have to put in.
Right.
You know, you have to build that resume, you know, in order to, you know, to be able to go in and then start demanding.
Right. Yeah. So if a producer walked in this room right now and said, hey, I want to be like you, but in today's music industry, what's the first thing you would tell them they got to do?
First thing I would tell them, first of all, learn your business. You know, as I just stated, you know, learn your craft, and at the same time, you know, learn first of all, figure out if this is what you want to do. Right. You know, I'm kind of back up a little bit, you know, because another thing that I've seen that has been, if you will, the demise of some producers is that they don't know how to leave their ego at the door. You know, so I mean that's the first thing. You know, you have to be a people's person. you know, and I always say, you know, you have to learn how to be a psychologist, psychiatrist, you know, a doctor sometimes,
Right.
you know, you know, not literally, but, you know, so with that, you know, I would say, first of all, you know, outside of that, understand, you know, understand your lane, you know, and where your strengths are. Know that, you know, and know what it is that, number one, that you have to represent. So if there's a particular artist that calls you in a particular genre, then know if that's not your area, you know, or if you're not strengthened in that particular area, know how to either accomplish, you know, that particular product. Because the one thing I would say, number one, as a producer doesn't mean that you have to know how to play
True.
instruments.
Facts.
You know,
Right.
So a producer is basically, you know, a supervisor, if you will.
Right. Right.
You know, and so in that, you know how to be crafty, if you will. You know, be one, you know, that has tough skin, because this music industry, I mean, it could pull you apart. You know, so in that, you know, even so I'm speaking of the things even before we even get to production.
Yeah.
You know and know how to use good time management. Mm-hmm. You know, be of a person that is integral with finances. You know, because you're not just dealing with your funds, you know, right. Your money, you know, this is the artist's money, you know, or the label, you know, that they worked hard for, right. As well. You know, so
I can't just go and buy a G-Wagon just because I got a big advance.
No, sir. No, sir. Don't do that, you know, because the one thing that you have to, and I had to learn this the hard way as well, you know, because it was at one point in time, you know, I was afforded and had the opportunities, you know, to be working back to back. I had projects, you know, lined up. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't saving accordingly.
Okay.
You know, and so I had to learn, okay, you know, when that rainy day came,
yes,
you know, yes. I'm looking at, all right, I'm looking at this account, and you know, it didn't add up to the stuff that I saw coming through, you know, because I had the mindset this is always going to be coming in.
Right. And that's a very good point, because everybody's approach to budgeting is not the same.
Exactly.
Right? And that seems to be a taboo word. Sometimes we talk about music, you know, there's a music budget that a producer gets, a producer's budget. Exactly. So you have to be able to manage other people's money.
You do.
But you're talking about right now, after all is said and done, you got to be able to manage your own, right?
You have to be able to manage your own. That's right.
Is there a recommended formula for, let's call it a percentage, that if you could do it over again, going back to let's say the first time you got a producer's check, how much would you have saved from that check, looking back in retrospect now, versus how much you spent?
Looking back, I probably would have saved 60, 70.
Okay.
You know, I probably would have saved that, you know, and saved that, and then doing some smart investing.
Right.
As well.
So you have on this side of it, you have the anticipation that you know it's not going to last. So to the young buck who's coming up now, you would say, okay, you hot right now.
Yeah.
But you may or may not get that call for every artist. So, and
not only that though, especially in today's world, you know, budgets are not big anyway.
Right.
You know, so the smart way to do it is try to get, you know, what you get, you know, on the front end of it, because it's at the same time, you know, make sure, you know, that you're handling the business where you are putting yourself, you know, to be able to receive residuals as it relates to royalties. But it's not guaranteed that you're going to receive X amount of dollars from royalties, especially with the streaming services, you know, and with the way that those are computed in the whole nine.
Right.
You know, you're not making a lot from that, if any, really.
Right.
So the way I look at that is I look at that now as it relates to music is being really a form of advertisement. You know, so which makes it a little more difficult for us sometimes as producers, because if you're a producer that's not an artist, you know, then the question is, okay, well, how do I do that? You know, so then, you know, then you have to look at the other side of the business, like sync licensing.
Yes.
You know, and which is one of the things and one of the reasons why I stress the importance of ownership.
Talk about it.
You know, and you know, ownership of not just your masters, but you know, your publishing in the whole nine. You know, so that you'll be able to put yourself, or at least have opportunities where you can put yourself to be able to license your music out.
Right.
You know, or the whole nine, and because if you don't have an ownership of that, you know, you're not in the position to be able to do so.
Right. And just to clarify as well to those listening, you know, some people may know this already. Obviously, we got a lot of music business pros that listen to the show, but everybody owns their publishing to start. You actually have to sell it or give it away.
You do. That's
so
right.
What you're saying is that people in the times that we live in now be very slow.
Yeah.
To give it away, because there's so many different mediums now and distribution outlets for music that can be monetized.
Exactly.
And with streaming as an example.
That's right.
The payout is very, very minuscule, almost non-existent.
It really is.
So there are other avenues and venues that if you're resourceful, your music is still dope. It's great.
It is,
right? Yeah. But maybe this label route, maybe this artist route is not the way you need to go. You might need to be monetizing over here, film, TV, content creation,
there you
social media, etc. Some of these things that are just like plentiful.
There you are.
There's music now. You go on Instagram and, you know, you get this. It's not always recognizable names.
Right.
There's some instrumentals in there that I find sometimes that I'm putting behind the story.
Yeah.
And it's pretty sweet.
But
is. I don't recognize the name.
You don't know the name. Exactly.
Somebody's getting a check for that, right?
They are. You know, and they're drawing those residuals, you know, and that passive income or whatnot, you know, and you know, so that's the type of residual, especially today, that you need to be looking at.
Right.
You know.
Supporting this podcast is easy. Just hit the subscribe button. See you on the next episode.